Arata might have money and a fancy family name, but his love life? Let's just say it's limited to OnlyFans and some solo action with his right hand. That is, until he uncovers the truth that he's adopted, and suddenly his world changes. He now finds himself extra close to his stepsisters and finds himself in awkward situations with them one by one. It all begins when Arata, desperate for dating advice, turns to Shion for help. Shion tells him he just needs to go with the flow to land a girlfriend, but Arata snaps, admitting he has no idea what going with the flow even means. Shion, puzzled, asks why Arata is so bothered by girls when he could have any girl he wanted, being the heir. Arata, trying to cover up his lack of confidence, gives some nonsensical speech about true romance. But that's when his sisters appear, taking turns teasing him. Arata tells them to mind their own business, but Shion adds fuel to the fire, telling Oka that Arata has been beating his meat every night looking at her and how curvy she's getting in all the right places. After sending her dog to attack him, she tells him he needs help, since regular brothers don't obsess over their sisters' bodies. Arata then denies any of this is true, claiming that he sees them as ugly street dogs, until Oka brings up his infamous incident with Kotono. The tension rises as Banri, the eldest, steps in to defend him, and Minami, surprisingly, admits that Arata isn't all that bad. When Arata tries to hug her in gratitude, she punches him so hard his heart shifts gears. The chaos is interrupted when Oka reminds them that it's Kotono's birthday on Saturday. The group agrees to go out together after the dinner. They all catch the train to school the next day. Later, in the men's room, Shion talks with Arata about how everyone at school seems to think they have the perfect family, when in fact, they're all just bullied by their 5 sisters with no real way to fight back. Shion even mentions rumors that Arata and his sisters might be secretly juicing, to which Arata immediately shuts down the idea. Shion, however, reminds him of Kotono's earlier confession. Later, Arata contemplates sending a friend request to his crush, but backs out at the last second. Just as he's about to chicken out, Uka bursts in, asking for his notes. As she flips through them, Arata notices her melons have ripened more, and he tells her to act her age. Uka, undeterred, calls him stupid for thinking she should be more refined, especially since they all grew up in the same house. She then slyly asks about his crush, revealing that Shion told her all about it. Reluctantly, Arata shares the girl's name, explaining they're on the same committee. Oka tries to play matchmaker, but Arata snaps back, telling her she should focus on finding someone who can tolerate her personality first. A few days later, on Kotono's birthday, Arata suits up for the occasion, waiting for dinner before heading out. When he sees Oka, she gives him a rare compliment, and they both head downstairs for the dinner. However, things take a turn when Minami, in a fit of frustration, apologizes for losing her AirPod. The argument quickly escalates until Arata steps in to break it up. Their dad, Kaname, arrives and thanks everyone for waiting. Just as they toast to Kotono, Kaname drops a bombshell. Everyone at the table is adopted. Arata, stunned, immediately demands an explanation. Kaname elaborates, revealing that while Minami and Shion are twins, the rest of them have no blood relation. He confesses he promised their mother to keep this a secret until the right time. After dropping the truth, he continues the dinner as if nothing happened, but everyone is visibly unsettled. A maid tries to serve them tea, but Banri stops her and takes over, serving them herself. Uka starts to voice her betrayal, but Seiha and Minami urge her to stop overthinking it. They ask Banri if she knew about the adoption, given that she's been around the longest. Banri, however, claims to have forgotten much of their childhood and reassures them that being adopted doesn't change anything about their family bond. With that, they head inside to rest, but after a few minutes of contemplation, Arata decides to clear his mind with a bath. As Arata stares at the pile of treasure in the laundry basket, he starts to realize that nothing in his life has really changed. That is until his gaze locks with Kotono's in the bath. Panicking, he quickly apologizes and tries to leave, but she asks him to scrub her back. Stuck, he does as she requests. Meanwhile, Shion and Oka are having a conversation about how the family's sudden revelation about their adoption might affect the way Oka has always treated Arata like a twin brother. Shion points out that the real concern is how society will react when the truth becomes public. Back in the bath, Kotono halts Arata from leaving him frozen in place, worried that she might want him to relieve her stress. He struggles to keep his composure. Shion, talking to Uka, suggests that they could start a family harem since there are no laws preventing unrelated siblings from marrying. Uka is horrified by the suggestion and accuses Shion of just waiting for an opportunity to unleash his creepy side. He quickly tries to backtrack, claiming he only thinks of her as a sister, which Uka somewhat naively believes. They shift the conversation to the night Arata told her to cover up her juicy melons, and Uka shudders at the memory. Shion, defending Arata, tells Uka to cut him some slack and asks if she knows what really happened between Arata and Kotono. Shion refuses to share the details, having promised Arata to keep it a secret. Uka, confident that nothing inappropriate happened, explains that they've all just been teasing Arata. Shion finally admits that Kotono confessed her feelings to Arata that night and refused to accept his rejection. When Arata tried to push her away, the others entered the game room and misunderstood, thinking he was the one making a move on her. To avoid further trouble, Arata only told Shion and kept it from the girls. Uka, upon hearing this, insists they need to intervene with Kotono, but Shion reminds her that Kotono is still young and may simply be confusing respect with love. Uka, annoyed, tells him to stop pretending to be some kind of sage. Shion, after considering the situation, agrees that Kotono's feelings could grow stronger, especially now that the truth about their family is out in the open. Back in the bath, Arata asks Kotono if the steam is getting to her head. In response, she doubles down on her confession, insisting she won't give up on him. When Arata tells her that nothing could ever happen between them, she replies that she understands the consequences of loving a brother, yet refuses to let go. Arata, frustrated, pulls her away and explains that she's just confused. He promises to keep looking out for her until she matures enough to understand her emotions. Then, before he empties his clip in her chamber, he decides to keep the incident a secret and turns to leave. But as he exits, Kotono calls him heartless for being both cold and caring at the same time. Meanwhile, Kaname tries to convince himself that tearing the family apart was worth it because of the promise he made to his wife. Banri interrupts his thoughts, reminding him of the situation. Arata returns to his room and finds Seiha lounging on his bed. He asks if she got lost, and she asks where he is coming from. When he lies, saying he just needed a walk, she doesn't buy it. Seiha, in her usual manner, starts talking about how they all played rock, paper, scissors to assign rooms, and how he ended up with the smallest one, while Oka got the largest. She continues talking about the random experiences they've all shared as a family, and Arata tries to connect this conversation to her sudden curiosity about his room. Without warning, Seiha pushes him onto the bed and leans in to monitor his heart rate.
失礼。静かにしてください。これは極秘事項なので。
As Arata wonders if he should just give in at this point, Seiya tells him that he's not the creepy guy she once thought he was. He asks her why she's trying to turn him into one, and when she mentions being in the bath when Kotono ambushed him, he instinctively pushes her off. Seiya commends him for keeping his composure despite the tempting situation. She suggests that Kotono may simply be confusing sibling love with something deeper. However, Seiha also points out that their father's sudden confession might have pushed Kotono to the brink of losing her sanity. Arata is still trying to figure out why Kotono's actions led her to suddenly straddle him, and Seiha explains that it was her way of making sure he didn't see them as anything other than siblings, even if they weren't really related. When Arata asks why she couldn't have used a less unsettling method, Seiha claims it was the easiest way, insisting she doesn't have any romantic feelings for him. She reminds him that, without the sibling bond, they could end up in some pretty messed up situations. Despite her teasing, she reminds him that she expects a bit more respect since she's his older sister. She tells him at the very least to call her something sexy. Then, she leaves but pauses outside his room to make sure that nothing about her experiment has triggered any unwanted feelings. Just as she convinces herself that their closeness meant nothing, Manami shows up and asks what she's doing outside Arata's room. Seiha brushes it off, claiming it's nothing, and walks away. The next morning, Arata wakes up with the weight of their new reality pressing on him. As he gets ready for school, he bumps into Banri in a lab uniform with Kotono, and he asks, "Have you finally lost it?" Banri explains that she was just trying it on, and then jokingly asks if he likes how it highlights the shape of her body. Arata calls her stupid for asking such a question so early in the day, but Banri tells Kotono not to worry about Arata's apparent dislike of them. He tries to apologize, but gets even more confused when Banri attempts to strip Kotono in front of him. Shion, overhearing the exchange, tells Arata that Banri was probably just trying to lighten the mood, hoping to return things to normal. Later, as they walk to school, two random guys talks about the girls, calling them the perfect family and commenting on how much of a baddie they are. Arata and Shion both realize that the girls have mastered the art of acting like everything is normal, even though the truth is bound to come out. The girls continue with their day at school, acting like nothing has changed. Meanwhile, Arata spends the entire day brooding until the last period. When he arrives at his locker to pack up, he repeats to himself that the girls are still his sisters, trying to keep his mind from wandering into uncomfortable territory. Just then, Minami approaches him, and he asks if she skipped practice. She replies that she has the day off for once. As they walk together, Arata compliments her on maintaining her consistency with training, despite the pressure of being the school's hottest tennis star. As she tries to return the compliment, 3 girls run up to her, asking for pictures and fawning over her like obsessed fans. Once they leave, Arata asks why girls are so drawn to her, and Minami explains that a photo she took in a guy's uniform made other girls think she has a thing for clapping girls. Arata wonders why he's never had such luck and suggests they go out to enjoy her day off, but Minami reveals that her coach gave her the day off because she failed a placement test. This causes Arata to remember that Minami has always been a coconut head, so he offers to help her study before taking her to a restaurant. As they sit down, he notices her face closely, realizing why almost everyone seems to want to eat whipped cream off her treasure chest. Seiha then asks for a more detailed explanation of the challenging parts, and as Arata breaks it down in a way that her restless mind can comprehend, she becomes distracted. Once he finishes explaining, she pretends to absorb every word as if it's etched into her mind. He tests her knowledge right away, only to watch her fail every single question. Sighing, he begins to accept that she might be beyond help, but then Namwon. She grabs the microphone and starts singing, completely winning him over with her carefree attitude. They leave the restaurant shortly after, but on their way home, he catches sight of his crush with someone else, making him immediately hide in embarrassment. Minami eventually admits that singing with him was actually a lot of fun, but he quickly reminds her that they were supposed to be focused on improving her rapidly declining test scores. Minami, shifting the topic, mentions how their dinner with Kaname was chaotic. She asks for his opinion on the situation and suggests they should have a conversation with him again to uncover the truth about their real parents. Minami expresses concern for Kotono, who is the youngest and seems especially sensitive. Arata starts to think that Minami isn't entirely useless after all, but he warns her to keep everything a secret so they don't draw unwanted attention. She reassures him that not being biological siblings doesn't change the bond they've built as a family. Her words cause Arata to feel more confident in her, but then she suddenly tells him not to stress over his crush, already giving another the Glock 3000. Arata, taken aback, asks how she knows that, and she casually mentions that Oka spilled the details of his tragic love life. She then suggests that Arata should focus on being a good older brother instead of worrying about losing his virginity. After patting his head and telling him to cheer up, Minami asks if they can play a game at home, but he refuses and tells her to focus on fixing whatever is wrong in her own mind. Back at the house, Minami gives Uka a box of cakes and hands over her lost AirPods, apologizing for losing them. Uka gives them back to her as a hand-me-down, then scolds her to be more careful next time. Uka asks for help with the cakes since she can't possibly eat them all by herself. Several days later, Arata finishes his morning routine and heads out, but he runs into Kotono, who greets him briefly before walking away without saying anything else. He wonders if she might be over her strange feelings for him. Just then, Seiha surprises him, reminding him to show her respect, like she mentioned the other night. Arata reassures her that there's nothing to worry about with Kotono, but before he can relax, Minami jumps in, like she had 10 Red Bull, and brings up how she humiliated him the previous night in the game room. She calls him Senpai, and Seiha, looking confused, asks why. Minami explains that he always tries to act like he's some wise, all-knowing figure. At school later that morning, Arata spots Lala from across the hall and tries to avoid her. Oka suddenly whispers, "I love you," in his ear. Arata pulls back in shock, concerned that she might be losing her mind. When he asks her why she said it, she teases him, asking if he's ever told Lala the same words. Arata protests, saying that doing so would be completely embarrassing, especially since Lala would just reject him for her boyfriend. Oka laughs, telling him that his overthinking will keep him single until his tiny sword shrivels up like dried grapes. Her friends call out to her, so she runs off to join them, leaving Arata standing there watching her. She begins discussing plans to take Kotono out to the park to celebrate her birthday, even offering to play Cupid and find a match for each of them. Her friends treat her like royalty, which causes Arata to wonder what would happen if he ever revealed how she acts like a completely unhinged person. One of the girls sneaks a glance at Arata and comments that he's surprisingly handsome. The others follow suit, admitting they've always been too intimidated by his physical appearance to notice how attractive he really is. When one of them jokes about becoming Uka's sister-in-law, Uka quickly dismisses the idea, saying Arata wouldn't know how to treat a lady. She calls him a gorilla who may have evolved physically, but still has a peanut brain. However, as she continues to talk, she starts listing his good qualities, like how organized he can be, and begins to compliment him more than she intended. Before she knows it, her face turns as red as a Carolina Reaper. When they ask about her blushing, she quickly changes the subject and claims they're late for class, walking off in a hurry. Arata, lost in thought, hopes nothing weird will happen when they all go to the park later. Days later, they finally arrive at the park, excited about the day ahead. Banri reminds everyone to stay together to ensure Kotono enjoys the day. As soon as the mascot appears, Minami dashes off with Uka, leaving Banri and Arata behind. The two beg the others to stay put while they go get food. A few minutes later, they return to find that the others have completely vanished, not even bothering to stay with the mascot. Banri and Arata sit down to wait, but after a while, he gives up trying to reach them. Banri, in an attempt to cheer him up, suggests they go on a date. Arata protests, reminding her that they're supposed to be celebrating Kotono's birthday, but she brushes it off, saying they'll run into the others eventually. She makes him eat all the food by himself while grabbing his arm and joking about how happy she is to be on a date with a self-proclaimed wannabe Riz god like him. Arata, still ignoring her compliments, focuses on her chest, which she notices. She teases him, asking if her melons is keeping his arm warm. He tries to play stupid, but then tells him to stop pretending like he's not interested in her body. Trying to maintain some self-control, Arata pulls away, but is still distracted by the number of admirers staring at her. Banri then promises that he'll get to grab her when they return home, but he acts uninterested. As they climb a flight of stairs, he struggles to keep his thoughts in check, slipping at the last step. Afterwards, they get on a ride, and Arata spends most of the time trying not to lose his lunch. Eventually, he contacts Shion, who informs him that the others are on the other side of the park. He's surprised when Shion tells the rest of the girls where they are. Uka immediately accuses them of abandoning Kotono to go practice baby making. Seiha points out that they're the ones who ran off first. The group discusses how Banri seems to be taking every chance to tease Arata, but when Uka notices how Kotono is reacting, she shifts the topic and asks which ride Kotono wants to go on next. Arata and Banri find a quiet spot to take a break, and Arata decides to ask her how she's been coping with their father's confession. She admits that it's been troubling, but she needs more answers from him before making any decisions. She notices the strange look on his face and asks if there's something else on his mind. But Arata, unsure how she'll react to what happened with Kotono and Seiha, decides to keep it to himself. Instead, he says he just wants their relationship as siblings to stay the same. As she rubs his head affectionately, Arata tells her to stop, suddenly remembering that she's always been overprotective. She assures him she will continue to protect their family, but before she can get up, a random girl slips and spills her drink. Arata quickly steps in to help, telling the girl not to worry, while Banri dries off the mess. He reassures her that he'll help protect their siblings. Shortly after, Shion and the girls arrive and ask why Arata's soaking wet. He explains what happened to ease their concerns. Minami suggests one final ride before they leave, and on their way, Banri grabs Arata's hand so they can run inside together. They finally finish the rides just as the sun sets, but Uka insists on keeping the celebration going with a performance, assisted by Minami. Arata suddenly announces that he needs to use the restroom, and Shion and Kotono decide to join him. Once they're far enough away, Seiha tells the others what happened between Kotono and Arata the other night. At first, they dismiss it as a joke, but when Seiha describes exactly what she witnessed in the bath, the group goes from disbelief to genuine concern. They all try to blame Arata, saying he couldn't keep his sausage under control, but Seiha reassures them that Arata was the victim. She explains how she managed to calm Kotono down, ensuring him that nothing inappropriate happened. When Uka asks how she can be so sure, Seiha casually explains how she had rubbed her golden box on Arata and monitored his heart rate to see if his glizzy would react. Banri is shocked that Arata stayed calm, but Uka is left trying to process what she just heard. Seiha suggests they all keep this quiet so Kotono doesn't feel embarrassed. But just then, Uka decides to share the gaming room incident, which changes the direction of the conversation. They begin to realize that Kotono might have genuine feelings for Arata. Seiha theorizes that the recent revelation from their father might have pushed her to fully embrace her feelings. Banri, however, insists that it's just a phase and that it'll pass if Arata doesn't act foolishly. She mentions that after their dinner with their father, she couldn't stop thinking about everything and went back to ask him a few more questions. The others press her for more details, but she only reveals that they were all orphans and that her parents were never found. The group agrees to keep the situation under wraps unless Kotono acts out. When Arata returns with Shion and Minami, they all start heading home. He feels confident that their bond won't be affected by one strange bathroom moment. Later, while waiting outside a store, Arata sees someone who looks like Lala and panics. Uka comes out to check on him, and they end up taking a walk together. At one point, she stops and says they need to talk about the fact that they were never actually twins, but Arata tells her not to bother, insisting that he will always see her as his twin sister. She continues talking about how they used to believe in twin telepathy, before suddenly blurting out that she loves him. Arata is stunned, realizing in that moment that the dynamic between them may never be the same. Flashback to a few days earlier. Shion had pulled Arata aside at school to ask if he'd ever looked at any of their sisters in a way that would make him want to beat his meat. Instead of giving an answer, Arata flipped the question back at him. Shion clarified that since they weren't technically siblings anymore, having romantic feelings, or even practicing baby-making, wasn't taboo. He even mentioned that Kotono had confessed her feelings to Arata. Arata denied ever seeing his sisters like that, but now, after Uka's confession, he couldn't help but want to sample some of her cream cake. That is, until Uka clarified that her love was purely platonic. Relieved, Arata was sure Uka would never see him as anything more than her dear brother. He jokingly called her a tsundere, and she took offense and said she had to use the bathroom. Uka walks away upset and tells him not to forget her souvenirs and make sure it's blue. Still, despite her claims that it was platonic, Arata couldn't shake what Shion had said, and his mind spiraled. Meanwhile, Uka wandered off alone, thinking about her own confession. She started feeling pangs of jealousy when she remembered how Seiya told her that Kotono had also confessed her love to Arata. The next morning, Arata hit the home gym for his daily routine, doing hardcore workouts like Saitama or Mash Burn Dead. Minami walked in, wanting to join him. Arate started to act like he sniffed 5 rounds of baking soda, and she told him to keep his energy down. It was still early. She praised him for never skipping a session, remembering how their dad used to put Arata through intense training to shape him into a leader. Arata, however, still questioned whether it helped his mental health. He returned the compliment, acknowledging her consistent training and her Olympic dreams. She downplayed it, but blushed all the same. What Arata didn't know was that the night before, when the girls realized he and Uka had gone missing, Minami had gone to look for them, and accidentally overheard Uka telling him she loved him. Since then, she has been a low-budget Enola Holmes. Back in the present, Arata teased her about slacking off, so she dove into dumbbell flies to play it cool. But when he called out her sloppy form, she gathered her courage to ask if something had happened between him and Uka. Arata, oblivious to what she meant, simply said that despite their constant fighting, he and Uka were super close, which only made Minami's stomach twist more. Overwhelmed, she excused herself, unable to carry the emotional weight of what she knew. Later, after wrapping up his workout, Arata headed to the bathroom, still mulling over what she'd said. When he opened the door, Seiya was there, looking like a baddie who can breed 500 of my future kids. Caught off guard, Arata freaked out, but Seiya shrugged it off, comparing the situation to a typical rom-com protagonist moment. Seiya continues undressing, prompting Arata to ask her why she's doing it. She responds by saying, "If my plain, boring body is enough to throw you off, then I apologize." Arata tried to shut the door, but Seiya's clothes blocked it, so he had to awkwardly gather them and drop them in the laundry while doing his best to avoid peeking at her showering. When he did glance over, he realized Seiya was acting totally normal, unlike him, who was sweating buckets from morally questionable thoughts. He noticed the ring she wore, their late mother's, and asked if it finally fit. She said it was still loose, but she clung to it because of the memories attached. Later on, Banri came knocking at Arata's door. She stepped in and teased him about how neat his room was, reminiscing about how their dad used to scold him for turning his room into a war zone. When Arata asked why she dropped by, she claimed she just felt like visiting. Of course, she then casually snooped through his laptop and stumbled on one of his Tina Trump OnlyFans videos. Arata snatched the laptop back in a panic, only to find out the title was visible on his email notifications. No password hacking needed. Embarrassed, he braced for judgment, but Banri laughed and said she was happy to know her brother was watching videos teaching him how to put oil in her gas tank. Then she did something unexpected. She asked Arata out on a date. The next day, Banri took him to a phone store, knowing he'd been eyeing a new device. Arata was touched by the thought, but she didn't stop there. She jokingly suggested they hit a hotel afterward for popcorn, blankets, and bad decisions. When Arata quickly picked a phone, she teased that people who choose phones for features over design also pick partners for personality over looks. Banri, on the other hand, believed appearance still mattered. She argued that if he ever ended up with an annoying girlfriend, at least she should be hot. The saleswoman, mistaking them for a couple, offered them a couple's discount. Banri played along, but Arata firmly declined. Later, as they walked, Banri spotted an ice cream stand and reminded him of the time all the siblings got into a brawl over ice cream. Arata remembered how Minami accidentally ate Kotono's ice cream, and because Kotono was too shy to speak up, Uka defended her, igniting a royal rumble. Kotono, always scared of conflict, would hide in the closet whenever she was upset, earning her the nickname Closet Fairy. Arata recalling how she used to be terrified of the supernatural, and Banri tells him to shut up. When she got serious and asked if something was bothering him, Arata insisted everything was fine. Meanwhile, Kotono was alone in her room, scrolling through birthday trip photos. Her eyes lingered on Arata's face longer than she wanted to admit. Then a message popped up in the sisters' group chat. Banri had posted a picture from their ice cream date. Kotono felt a stab of jealousy but kept herself in check, quietly saving the photo. Back on the outing, Banri suddenly got a message and told Arata she had to leave. Before rushing off, Arata joked that she should go on a real date next time with a proper boyfriend. Blushing, Banri teased him right back before leaving, drawing everyone's eyes as she walked by. No one could believe someone so gorgeous was real. Banri then called Minami and told her the date hadn't loosened Arata's lips. Minami, still convinced Uka had confessed to him romantically, sent a message to clarify, but accidentally sent it to the group chat. In a panic, she deleted it and prayed to the anime gods that no one saw it. Just as she was starting to relax, Uka popped into the bathroom to say it was her turn to shower. Relieved that Uka didn't see the message, Minami let her guard down, unaware that Kotono had already read it. And now Kotono knows she has an op now. Later that evening, they all gather for dinner. Arata steals a glance at Seiha, who's sitting there spaced out like she's having a 1v1 with depression. A bit later, he bumps into her when she's off by herself. At first, he walks right past her like it's none of his business, but then his conscience kicks in, and he circles back to ask if she's alright. To his surprise, Seiha casually drops that she's been dying to play Twister. Since he asked, she drags him along to join her. Arata, confused, asks what inspired this random desire to play a game where babies are made. That's when she drops the bomb. Ever since she visited his room, her fountain hasn't been dry since, when thinking about him. So now she needs to play Twister to figure out if she really wants to, well, let him decorate her cake. Arata is ready to nope out of this situation entirely, but Seiha reminds him of how she bailed him out during his exam crisis, and he caves. Once the game starts, Arata treats the mat like it's a lava field, intentionally keeping his distance. But Seiha has other plans. She keeps getting closer, trying to see if brushing up against him triggers any feelings. A few rounds in, she complains that he's still dodging her. So next move, she strategically places herself in a pose that would send most men straight to an early grave. Arata nearly short-circuits and announces his surrender. But Seiha isn't having it. She tells him backing out isn't an option, so he awkwardly keeps going. In the next round, Arata has to put his foot on a blue circle that's right beneath Seiha. He tries to maneuver gently, but still manages to graze her second set of lips, which sends his brain into overload. Out of nowhere, Seiha launches into a lecture on human hormones. Dopamine for winning, oxytocin for baby-making practice, and serotonin for the pleasure of tranquility. She wonders when exactly she switches from one to the other around Arata, who's apparently the reason her kids are always dripping down her legs. Then she folds herself into a pose that made Arata forget they were siblings for 17 years. He starts glitching hard, but just as the game reaches critical danger levels, Seiha accidentally topples over, landing butt first on Arata's chest, her excuse being muscle failure. Arata stares at the ceiling, trying to process the fact that he just got full contact squished by his own sister. Thankfully, Seiha gets up and tells him she didn't feel any real sparks, meaning she can now go on living her life without staying up playing with her toy Rose. She thanks him for the help and walks off, leaving Arata mentally destroyed. Oka, who appears right on time to hear his exasperated groans. She invites him for a gaming session later, which makes Arata suspicious. Why would she want to play games with him alone? He assumes she's just super into gaming, but the memory of all the submission holds she used to put him in after losing has him sweating. And she once randomly confessed she loved him. That's still in the back of his mind too. They start playing, with Uka acting like it's the grand finals of esports, while Arata remains cool and composed. At one point, Uka leans against his leg in excitement, not even noticing how close she's gotten. Arata notices and sees her bright, innocent smile. To him, she's still just his adorable little sister. Uka wins the first few rounds, but Arata quickly dials in and stomps her repeatedly, leaving her emotionally wounded. She suddenly says she needs a bathroom break, but instead sneaks up behind him and puts him in a sleeper hold like the old days. Arata starts begging for mercy. Both he and his in-game character are flatlining, but his biggest fear is that her body's a little too close for comfort, and he's trying not to awaken his inner beast. Fed up, Arata summons his man strength and flips her over, pinning her to the ground. Then it hits him. The position they're in is extremely sus. When he looks down, Oka is staring at him like, please don't hold back. She murmurs that he's really a man now, and Arata's brain does a full system crash. She gets up and runs off, defeated and blushing, secretly wishing he'd go wild on her. Arata is left behind, dazed, wondering what the heck she meant by calling him a man. Tired and confused, he heads to bed, unaware that Kotono was in the closet the entire time, eavesdropping. The next day, Arata's dad pulls him aside for a private chat. He starts by asking how everyone's doing after the big reveal. Arata says his sisters have definitely become more open emotionally. Then, out of nowhere, his dad asks if he's found the one. Meanwhile, the girls are watching a romantic drama where the guy proposes on a bridge. Banri finds it swoon-worthy, but Oka cringes, saying proposing in nature is for hobos. When asked what her dream proposal looks like, she says she wants a rich, alpha male to pop the question in a 5-star restaurant with $1 million ring. Seiha tells her to stop smoking tea bags. When it's Seiha's turn, she says she wants a guy who already has everything planned out, from the number of kids to their weekly basketball schedule. Then Manami jumps in and shuts the whole conversation down, saying the proposal isn't about the setting, it's about the person asking. They all nod in agreement. As they head back to their rooms, Kotono can't hold it anymore. She snaps and confesses, right there, that she's in love with Arata. Banri tries to calm her down, assuming it's just sibling affection, but Kotono doubles down and loudly declares that she wants to marry him. She says that after what she saw, she knows now that every sister is her rival, and she's ready to fight for love. Back with Arata, his dad expresses concern that Arata might not find a wife as the future head of the family. Arata curiously asks why his dad chose their mother. The dad jokes that he fell for her creamy assets, but then admits he was captivated by her bright, powerful spirit. Arata asks why there's only one photo of her, and his father says that truly beautiful people don't like being photographed. Then he brings up the mysterious 8th room in the house. Arata admits that the siblings used to think it was some kind of horror room that leads straight to the afterlife. Arata reassures his dad that he trusts him, believes the timing of the truth reveal had its reasons, and that he's proud to be the oldest sibling. As the heir, he promises to take care of the family and make sure they all live happily. After he leaves, his dad looks at the old picture of his wife and says he's proud to have adopted Arata as his own son. We then see a young girl building a sandcastle. Suddenly, an old letter appears, addressed to her siblings. As it begins to read aloud in a strange, eerie voice, a woman approaches and compliments the little girl's outfit. Just then, a man walks up to them, and the girl excitedly calls him Papa. It's revealed that the girl is actually a young Chihiro, the future mother of all the siblings. She smiles brightly and waves toward her own mother in the distance, offering a touching glimpse into her childhood. Later, Arata heads out for his usual jog. Meanwhile, Uka is adjusting her tie. The scene then shifts to Seiha, deep in thought, still turning over Kotono's confession. As Arata returns home, he spots Manami leaving early for morning practice. The second they bump into each other, she short-circuits and blurts out something about being late. As she starts to bolt, Arata gently stops her and asks if she's doing okay. He's noticed something's been off with her ever since that night. Her mind immediately jumps to Kotono's confession, and in a panic, she insists she's totally fine before dashing off. While Arata is still trying to decode her strange behavior, Banri is in the middle of giving the dog a full-blown lecture about its chaotic eating habits. Arata walks in and asks why she's already dressed. Upon hearing she's got something urgent to check at college, he also jumps on the yell at the dog bandwagon. Big mistake. The dog decides to turn Arata into its warm-up dummy and launches at him. Just then, Shin steps in. Banri sheepishly says she couldn't make breakfast, but Shin brushes it off and jokes that the real question is what they're supposed to do with Arata's almost lifeless body. Not long after, Minami steps onto the court and takes over like she owns the place. Her flawless defense and laser focus leave the rest of the team awestruck, but internally, she's locked in a mental battle with the memory of Kotono's confession. Once practice ends, she tries to slip away for a breather, but a trio of superfans cut her off, begging for tennis advice. She feeds them a stream of nonsense tips that only makes them more confused. She then spots a senior and asks for their usual one-on-one match. Now gets all hyped, determined to finally beat her, but after a few minutes of chasing the ball, she predictably loses and flops beside Minami on the bench. When Minami says she missed playing with her, Now casually drops the bomb. She'll be graduating after the next tournament, and they probably won't see each other again until Minami's playing pro. Now admits she originally pegged Minami as just another rich girl coasting through life, but Minami proved her wrong by climbing to the top of the team in record time. Minami teases her about becoming a motivational speaker, which embarrasses Now into challenging her to a rematch just to save face. Later, Minami overhears some teammates gossiping about how Now didn't land any tennis scholarships, meaning she likely won't play competitively after school. The moment sticks with her. She remembers all the guidance Now's given her since day one and silently makes a vow. She's going to make sure Now graduates with a championship medal. That same afternoon, Arata returns home and runs into a maid before heading to the training room, where Minami has been grinding ever since she got back. He enters with a cold look that throws her off, but then he asks why she didn't tell him the tournament was just a week away. He swears he'll help her prepare. When she tries to brush it off, he suddenly demands to know why she's been hiding her injury. She freezes. She tries to deny anything's wrong, but Arata mentions the maid caught her wrapping her ankle earlier. He tells her that even if she doesn't want to train with him, she should at least have someone she can trust. Then he offers to help her stretch. Elsewhere, Uka sips tea while replaying Kotono's confession. After the incident, everyone blamed it on the sappy romance movie they'd watched, but Seiha called them out. Kotono had clearly meant it. They all agreed not to joke about it anymore, but Banri still thought it'd be better to give Kotono space to figure out her feelings instead of turning it into a dramatic spectacle. As Uka replays that awkward moment in the game room and what it means going forward, Arata helps Minami stretch her ankle, but gets momentarily distracted by how much she's grown and changed physically. After a few too many seconds of admiring her toned abs, he snaps out of it in order for her not to affect her career. He makes her promise not to overdo it. After they both get some stretches in, he heads back upstairs. On the way, he runs into Kotono. Her weird silence makes him think she's probably over everything that happened and just embarrassed about hugging him in the bathroom. He casually tells her to put on something warmer and starts walking off. But then, she asks if he was with Minami. When he says yes, she immediately follows up by asking if anything weird happened. The question hits him like a brick. He wonders if she somehow found out about the injury, but keeps his cool and asks what she means. She quickly panics and says never mind before running off. Later on, the big tournament kicks off, and Minami and her team face off against tough competitors from all over. Throughout every match, she keeps thinking about how Now guided her when she was just starting and refuses to let any of the pressure shake her focus. Thanks to her grit, they make it all the way to the finals. The entire team, including Now, celebrates her epic performance, and she responds by thanking them all for their support. As everyone boards the bus, a sharp jolt of pain hits Minami's ankle. Now catches the slight grimace on her face, but says nothing. Back home, Arata asks if she's fit for the finals. She assures him she's fine, adding that she already spoke with her coach about seeing a professional. A few days later, Arata sits down to breakfast with Banri. Arata asked if cereal was really enough for breakfast, and Banri just shrugged and said, "Girls gotta watch what they eat, you know, avoid packing on the pounds." Then she smirked, gave him a chest rub that made his tool stand at attention. She added, "But hey, if I do, help me tone my body, Coach Arata." After he's done crashing out, he asks if Minami has eaten yet, since she's supposed to leave soon for the final round. Banri forgot all about it, but then Seiha walks in and asks if anyone's seen her. Her tennis shoes are still by the door. Moments later, the rest of the crew comes out and confirms they haven't seen her all morning. That's when it hits Arata. Something's wrong. They rush to check Minami's room, but she's nowhere to be found. Panic starts to creep in. Just when anxiety peaks, she casually walks in holding a convenience store bag like nothing's wrong. When questioned about her inter-school finals, she shrugs them off, insisting she's got everything handled. They turn to Shion for answers, but he's as clueless as they are. Concerned, Arata heads to her room expecting a sob fest, but instead, he finds her sprawled out, munching snacks like a big back, completely unbothered. Worried, Arata voices his concern. That's when Minami finally shares that her coach benched her after learning about her injury, trying to protect her future in the sport. Arata asks if she's really okay with giving up on the one person she wanted to fight for. She brushes him off again, saying she didn't have a choice. As Arata turns to leave, he catches a glimpse of her giving him a half-hearted smile that doesn't quite feel right. Outside the room, Shion suddenly confronts Arata. He admits there's something he's kept quiet. Earlier that morning, he saw Minami crying alone outside, deliberately hiding from everyone. He chose not to approach her, knowing she wouldn't want anyone to see her vulnerable, but he's painfully aware of how much she's hurting. Hearing this, Arata storms back in, grabs Minami by the wrist, and drags her outside, where Uka and the others are waiting to go support her at the tennis finals. While everyone is stressing about arriving late, Minami's mind drifts to the moment she was removed from the lineup. Now had told the coach about Minami's injury out of concern, and though Minami had begged to still compete, wanting to help now win her final match, now thanked her for the support, but insisted Minami protect her own future instead. As they travel, Arata tells Minami he's unsure whether they made the right decision, but pleads with her to step down if things get dangerous. He also asks her to never lie to them again, or to herself. Meanwhile, Minami's team loses the doubles match, leaving only the singles games as their last shot at victory. Back in the car, traffic brings them to a standstill. Panic sets in again until someone spots rental bikes by the roadside. Seiha says she has the app to rent them, and without hesitation, Arata pulls Minami along to cycle to the venue. Shion hands her gear to her, wishing her luck as she rides off. During the bike sprint, Arata gives it everything he's got, legs burning and gasping for air. He reminds Minami of when they had to write something for Mother's Day in school, and how all of them struggled because their mom had passed away, except for her. Minami had written to their late mom about how the siblings had grown closer since her passing. Arata recalls how much he admired her positivity during even the darkest times. He tells her she may not be Einstein, but her perseverance and attitude make her a true fighter. He hopes the universe finally recognizes her efforts. At the venue, Now wins her singles match, meaning Minami's substitute has to take the last game. But then Minami and Arata finally arrive. Before she can even say a word, Arata drops to his knees and begs the coach to let Minami play, declaring that this match is just as vital to her as her future. Now backs him up, and the coach relents. Minami steps onto the court. As anxiety creeps in, her siblings' cheers from the stands ease her nerves. She returns the first serve and scores, but her opponent ups the difficulty fast. When Minami pushes herself for a winning return, her injured ankle takes a hit. She snags another point, but not without consequences. After a brutal match, Minami falls short. Her teammates cry out in disappointment. Minami apologizes through a smile and even offers Now to slap her for all her big talk. Instead, Now bows deeply, thanking her for everything. She hopes Minami's injury doesn't affect her future. Minami tries to hold in her tears. Later, her siblings wait, knowing she's gone off to be alone. Arata sets out and finds her sitting quietly on a bench. She opens up, saying how humiliated she feels, how even her team thanked her after she let them down. She thanks Arata for bringing her and says she's ready to move forward. But Arata pulls her into a hug and tells her to stop pretending she's okay, at least not while he's holding her like this. Minami breaks down and asks what she needs to do to finally be enough, whether it's winning Grand Slams, becoming the world's best, or rewriting history. She desperately wants to be strong. Arata assures her, one day, she will be. This is the part where all you lonely souls start wishing you had a stepsister, or two, or maybe even four. But unless you're living in an anime, or in Alabama, we'll all just have to keep dreaming. Comment below, and who knows, a stepsister might magically appear in your room tonight. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're the first to catch next week's episode.